Hi, Nupur. Thank you so much for joining Gold Media. How are you doing today?
Hi, Supriya. Thank you for having me. It's such a pleasure to be talking to you. I'm doing very well. What about you?
I am doing great. You know what? Super excited to talk to you because
Same here.
private equity, venture capital, this whole industry is completely new and new to a lot of people, and people have so many questions. So we are really looking forward for this conversation.
Same here. And I hope I'll be able to answer all the questions you throw at me.
Perfect. So let's go ahead and get started. So, Nupur, you have immensely contributed to the private equity and venture capital investment sector. How did you get into this? How has been your journey, and what were some of the challenges that you have faced in being a private equity and a VC investor?
Okay. Thank you, Supriya. So, quick background about me. I'm an MBA and a chartered accountant by training. I started my career as a finance professional. You know how we all start once we do our CA. And I worked with firms like PricewaterhouseCoopers, Discovery Networks, and IFC, which is a part of the World Bank Group, in finance and operational roles. In 2011, I moved to the investment side at IFC as part of the team that invested in private equity and venture capital funds. And, I was there till I held a full-time job. In my last full-time role, I was leading IFC's regional business for investing in private equity and venture capital funds. You know, Private equity, venture capital, it is an industry that I immediately loved. It is an industry full of really smart people who are either backing and or building businesses, innovative and disruptive ideas, and quite literally changing the economic landscape of the country. And one can learn something new in every single interaction. And it constantly challenges you out of complacency. So I continue to be a part of this industry in my current entrepreneurial avatar. Even, as I sit on some boards as an independent director, I'm a member of investment committees with institutional investors, and of course, Vinpi, the platform that I'm building to bring more women as investors and entrepreneurs, and which is very specifically focused on the private equity and venture capital industry. So that's been my journey so far. And
Very
I think you
interesting. So, the different roles that you talked about just now, you are an investor, you are a P, you are VC, you are on boards, and you also have WinPay. So, how do you strike a balance between all the three or four roles that you play, Nupur?
I think it's all about loving what you're doing, Supriya. And I'm sure you'll agree with that.
Absolutely.
I enjoy every part of what I do. I love my board roles. I think it's just the ability to be a part of building a business, steering that business, and, contributing to creating value is very exciting for me. Investment committees are my way of continuing to do what I did for a very long time at IFC. And like I said, it's an industry that I love, and Vinci is my passion. Yeah, it's a cause that I really believe in. So I don't think it's difficult, and I also think that once we sort of prioritize our schedule and we sort of say that these are the things I want to do, um, one can find a way to manage the schedule. Um, WinP allows me to be largely flexible, and you sort of slot things by how demanding they are. And
Right.
I'm sure there are different strategies that are available. Not sure if you want me to get into that.
No, absolutely. By all means. We would love to hear that.
No, I was just saying that there is also this concept of different balls, and I don't know if you're familiar with this or not. So there are rubber balls. If you drop them, they'll just bounce back up.
Right.
There are lead balls. If you drop them, they just stay there. And then there are glass balls. If you drop them, they will shatter.
Mm-hmm.
And I learned very early on that you need to just allocate your work and categorize your work accordingly. So the rubber balls is stuff that if you don't do now, it's all right. It's just going to come back to you. You can do it at another time.
Yeah.
Let balls work that it's all right even if you drop, it's just going to go and it will not have implications. And glass balls are things that are time sensitive and, that require attention. So just being able to prioritize your work helps.
Awesome, awesome. So, Nupur, you're a very big proponent of diversity, and we know that you have been P. And what is your take on diversity specifically for P and VC industry, especially that we know it's a male dominating profession. Earlier, at least it used to be.
It still is.
Yeah, I was going to say that it still is.
It still is. And why don't I share some stats? And I'll love to lead with data. So you see, women form only about 10% of senior roles in private equity and venture capital. And within that, women form only 2.4% of founding partners that have control over the firm's capital and capital allocation decisions. And then, if you look at the overall industry composition, more than two-thirds of private equity and venture capital fund managers have all male senior leadership teams. And then, if you extrapolate it forward, not surprisingly, only about 1.4% to 2.3% of private equity venture capital funding goes to women led businesses. And these numbers are true not only in India, but they're also true at a global level, give and take a few basis points. And to top it all, private equity venture capital as an industry is behind some of what are traditionally perceived as male dominated sectors, like, say, manufacturing, where one in three professionals is female and where 25% leaders are women. And it is also behind the infrastructure sector, where, as per OECD, women hold 19% of leadership positions. So,
Wow.
when you have, yeah. So when you
Not
have
a
an
good,
industry,
not a good data to look at, right?
not
Being
a
a
good
woman.
data to look at. Absolutely. And when you have an industry where more than three-fourths people working are men and more than 90% of decision makers are men, traditional stereotypes, unconscious biases that surround women and work. And, in this case, work is finance. So,
Yeah,
which has its own set of stereotypes. Women are not good at finance. Women are not good at maths. Women are not good
maths
at
and
STEM.
numbers, right?
Yes. So all of those are precipitated across conversations and decisions. And then there are sometimes conscious biases also. So,
And I think,
another
yeah, go ahead, please.
another data point that I love to talk about is that 75% of investors invest through their network and hire through their networks. So it's just a cycle that keeps going around.
Wow. Yeah. And another thing I wanted to mention was I think women are also conditioned to believe that they might not be good at finance. So by default, they don't try to even get into or venture into the field.
That is true. These are stereotypes that find women very early on in school. Um, you know, oh, it's all right. She's not good in science. She's not good in math. But very interestingly, if you look at the data on women who are graduating in STEM, that data is steadily rising. And when I last checked, it was somewhere in the mid 40s. So some 40 odd percentage of STEM graduates today are women.
That is really good to know, Nupur. So you have spent a good amount of time in the US as well, and now you're working in India in the investment sector. What are some of the differences, Nupur, that you have noted between the two geographies?
In terms of gender bias,
Gender bias and in general in the investment sector about the overall approach.
see, from a sector point of view, the US is a very different market from India. It's a more mature market, it's a more evolved market. And even in terms of the corporate landscape, the kind of quote unquote target investments, the kind of companies that have to be backed have a very different risk profile and a different investment opportunity than what we find in India. India is a growing market. So here, for the longest time, investors have bet on growth because of the demographics, because of the way the economy is growing. The US is a mature market. So on the private equity side, the US has seen, more innovation in structuring, more leveraged buyouts, etc. And on the early stage side, we all know Silicon Valley. I think just
Yeah,
the ecosystem there is uh, multiple times bigger than the ecosystem we have. I think India has done a tremendous job in developing our ecosystem. We have brilliant fund managers. We've shown proof of concept with some very successful companies. What we really need are a couple of those large Google, Facebook, type of tech giants to have
right.
large presence here locally, and that would complete the ecosystem.
Perfect. So, Nupur, you have expertise in finance for like so many years. You have been in the investment industry for more than, I think, 2 decades now. What are some of your investment strategies or approach to assess the growth of any company, growth potential of any company?
So, if you're looking at any investment, for me, the first consideration is always people.
Yeah,
And there is this saying that I really like, says that a bad team can run a great idea to ground, and a good team can still do reasonably well with a fairly poor or a below average idea. They will still make do. So I really believe in the people that one is investing. It's a long term partnership. It's almost like getting married, right? You're not sort of going to exit an investment in the next 6 months. That's what stock markets are for, not private investments.
right,
Uh, and then, I think growth is relatively easier to understand if you understand the market dynamics. And if you can really get down to understand the business model. And I think my experience and my work prior to becoming an investor in finance and operational roles has allowed me to understand business models, understand key business drivers, and therefore, be able to take a bet on whether this business has long-term potential or not. But it is really very much centered around people. Who are they? What do they want to do? Do they have the skills to do what they want to do?
right, right. So, Nupur, coming to the point that you talked about having a good team. So, what are some of the qualities that you look for in while onboarding your team?
My team,
Tricky.
okay. No, not tricky, and it's pretty straightforward. I say this all the time. I always hire for aptitude and attitude. If
Awesome.
you get a person with the right mindset, with the ability and desire to learn, you can teach them anything. You find an expert, but they have the wrong attitude and the wrong aptitude, you can't do anything with them.
Absolutely. That is so true. So, Nupur, what advice would you like to give it to our young aspiring entrepreneurs as well as the investors?
So I think there are a couple of things that are very important. The first is to have clarity of vision. What
Okay.
is it that you want to build? What is it that you want to do? And let that be rooted in a solid understanding of your sector. So if you're an investor, please understand, the space you're in, the stage that you're in. Please understand what is it that you want to invest in. Are you a tech investor? Are you an early stage investor? Please understand that space. If you're an entrepreneur, please understand what kind of a business, what kind of a solution and a product or a service that you want to build, and let you know think it with the outlook on the sector, and also link it to the problem statement. Then don't take a no personally. Investors will have different mandates, people will have different pieces, they will have different portfolio designs. A no means only as much. In fact, it is great if one is able to use every no and occasionally even a yes, but especially a no as a learning opportunity. If I'm an entrepreneur and an investor said no, how do investors think? What were they looking for? What were the questions that I was not able to answer, or what are the gaps that they felt existed in my pitch? If I'm an investor and I'm fundraising and my investors have said no, similarly, what were they looking for? What are the gaps that I wasn't able to bridge in my conversation? And how would I do this differently the next time?
Absolutely. Thank you so much for that, Nupur. So, being a successful entrepreneur and a busy, professional, how do you how do you keep a work life balance, and which is something very very important, and right now especially people are talking about the mental health, physical health, and everything. So what is your take on that?
See, first, I think work-life balance is a very individual and a very personal definition. Everybody looks at it differently. For me, what has always worked is having my priorities clear, and I know I keep coming at it from a priorities point of view, but I have a small child, and it is very clear in my mind that my child is my number one priority. Does not mean I need to be with him 24/7. Does not mean I need to sit
Yeah,
in front of him whenever he's home. It just means that I need to be there when he needs me, and I need to be there to fulfill all of his emotional needs, provide him the parenting that he needs, right?
absolutely.
And just having that clarity really allows me to balance my work in terms of being able to say no to work and being able to say no to stuff at home.
Very
Because, you
nice.
know, you don't feel guilty about compromising either which ways, because that is the one thing that working mothers really deal with all the time, that guilt on, did I do enough at work? Did I do enough at home? So that for me is a big thing. I'm also very fortunate to have a very supportive family. My husband is a true partner. I think he believes in all of this more than I do. My mom, my
Wow,
dad-in-law, I think that social infrastructure that I have, I'm really blessed.
awesome. That is so good, Nupur. So, Nupur, you are a founding member of WINPI, and I know that is something which is really, really close to your heart, and it's doing really well. Please give us an insight on how it is doing and what motivated you to start WINPI.
So, Supriya, WINPI stands for Women in Private Equity. I am a woman in private equity. And like I said
Absolutely.
earlier, I've been in PVC for a long time. And as part of my work at IFC, I noticed this striking lack of women, especially senior women in the industry. And I also observed that nothing was really changing. And I could count the number of women fund managers, senior women in the industry, on the fingertips of both my hands. And over a period of 10 years, that number did not change. So when I decided to step away and I decided to, turn entrepreneur, so as to speak, I was quite determined to build a platform that would really take action to address this low representation of women in the PVC industry and to promote gender diversity in the ecosystem. So when I finally exited IFC in 2019, I began reaching out to the firms that I knew and the individuals that I knew in the industry. And I started talking to them about my vision. And what I heard was tremendous excitement, as well as a very strong desire on the part of industry leaders to really support this cause. People were really excited. Were looking they were really looking for solutions that they could practically implement as they wanted to work towards gender diversity. And that's how WINPI came into action. And if I think about how WINPI works, I'm very focused on actions and outcomes. And that really can be achieved when it comes to gender parity. It can be achieved by working with firms and decision makers and industry leaders. So, with that at core, WINPI has become like an industry platform. It's really like an industry collective that is leading collective efforts to bring about gender diversity, bring more women as investors and funded entrepreneurs. And we've worked with more than 40 firms, including a core group of 30 odd firms that has pensions, DFIs, fund of funds, fund managers, advisors, would continuously working with us to change workplace practices and policies. And then we also have a set of resources that we provide to women. We have mentorship program. We do a lot of training, panel discussions, career boot camps, etc. So, almost 4 years later, I'm so proud to say WINPI is widely recognized as a credible industry-wide initiative which is dedicated to promoting gender diversity and empowering women within the ecosystem in a really meaningful way. And some of our data, we measured our outcomes earlier this year. In 3 years, Vinpi has organized more than 30 knowledge and career events, and these events have seen close to 9,000 registrants, which reflects our widespread and deep interest in our initiatives. And our attendees have reported a 96% satisfaction score. So it's very exciting
Wow.
for us to, yeah, so it's exciting for us to know that not only are people, um, you know, reposing their faith in us, but they're also going back satisfied with what we are doing for them. And then when we look at our mentorship program, we've just onboarded our fourth cohort. The first two cohorts that graduated, more than 70% of our mentees have seen, career progress by way of promotions and valuation increases and fundraisers as applicable. And the third cohort, which just graduated, we already see, one third of our mentees with professional growth and promotions, etc. So we are very fortunate to be in a position where we are able to take forward this really critical conversation, both with the firms as well as with the women that we really seek to support and empower.
That is so good. And I would like to personally thank you, Nupur, for thinking of women. Not only just thinking, you are really helping them excel in a field which is very, very male dominating. So, really, really appreciate all your effort. And thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Supriya. It was a pleasure talking to you.